In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NBA games happening on March 9, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Philadelphia 76ers versus Cleveland Cavaliers. This matchup is set in Cleveland, with the Cavaliers playing in front of their own crowd and holding a record in the high 30s in wins while the 76ers sit in the mid-30s, so it feels more like big brother versus little brother than giant versus minnow. The host side has been priced like a clear superior, and the number treats them as if they are supposed to roll without much resistance, which quietly builds in a pretty steep tax on anyone who wants to trust the home favorite vibe. When you pull back and look at what Philadelphia has actually been over the long haul, their profile is closer to a solid, ordinary team than a disaster, with a net rating hovering near 0, an offense that scores at a respectable clip, and a pace that stays just under the league's racetrack games. Cleveland grades out better by the usual advanced stuff, with a more efficient attack and a defense that holds its own, and they do play a touch faster, but that combination points to a gap of a few points on neutral ground, not some chasm that justifies a huge margin in a single regular season contest. So before you even talk about who is missing, the math already leans toward the number being padded a bit, the kind of padding that looks small on paper but looms large when every possession starts to feel like it weighs a little extra in the second half. Now the health story makes things even more interesting and honestly a little weird. Philadelphia is still navigating life without Joel Embiid, who remains sidelined with that right oblique issue. Paul George is serving his suspension and has a set date before he can come back. Tyrese Maxey has that sprained right finger that already ruled him out for this one, and young pieces like VJ Edgecombe and Johnny Broome are not part of the current mix because of back trouble and knee surgery respectively. On the surface, that reads like a team stripped of star power, which it is, but it is also a group that has been living in this version of itself for a while, figuring out lineups and leaning on whoever is available, which matters when you are talking about effort and chemistry rather than pure talent. Cleveland has its own injury laundry list, with Jared Allen dealing with a knee problem, Max Strus working through a foot issue, Tyrese Proctor out with that quad strain, and role guys like Dean Wade and Donovan Mitchell carrying recent ankle and groin concerns even when they are listed as good to go. The key names on the host side, like James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, and Evan Mobley, are expected to play. But they are doing it on a roster that is not at full strength and that has to think about the long grind, not just one night. On the other side, rotation pieces such as Kelly Oubre Jr. and Andre Drummond are active and part of the regular plan, which gives the 76ers an edge in energy, size on the glass, and a kind of stubborn physical presence that shows up in ugly games more than in highlight reels. The schedule context quietly leans their way too, with Philadelphia coming in off a loss in Atlanta but with a day to breathe, reset, and hear about what went wrong, while Cleveland is stepping back on the floor after an intense outing the night before, the kind of emotional game that can leave tired legs even when the official line says everyone is available. Coaches are human, and when a team has played a big game the previous night, there is often a little voice that says, if we can get control of this one, let us shorten the Stars' minutes and live to fight the next battle, which is not exactly the mindset that creates free-flowing, margin-stretching basketball for all 4 quarters. Philadelphia, meanwhile, has gotten used to punching up with whoever is left, leaning on Drummond to gobble rebounds, sending a swarm of wings to collapse on drives, and playing at a tempo that feels more like grinding gears than flooring the gas pedal, all of which makes true blowouts harder to sustain. Put all of that together and you get a pretty average team, in terms of underlying numbers, catching a pile of points from a better but banged-up opponent that just played last night, and that is the classic ugly underdog spot where the number, not the name on the jersey, becomes the star of the show. As our first pick for this matchup, the Philadelphia 76ers to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. On paper, you see headline talent and your brain jumps straight to fireworks, yet two of the big scoring pillars for Philadelphia are out, with Embiid still sidelined and Paul George unavailable, and Maxey also sitting with that finger issue, which nudges this version of the 76ers into a mode where they win possessions with grit, patience, and half-court sets more than with constant shot making. Their season profile backs that up, with an offense that sits in a respectable middle ground, a defense that is roughly even with it, and a pace that leans a touch slower than league average, which tends to keep totals from going wild unless something unusual kicks in. Cleveland, by contrast, really does have one of the best offensive engines around when you look at the full season, built on Harden's playmaking, Mitchell's ability to score from pretty much anywhere, and Mobley's finishing and touch around the basket. The twist is that several of the players who helped turn that engine into a full-on scoring avalanche, like Jarrett Allen with his vertical rim pressure and Max Strus flying around the arc as a movement shooter, are not on the floor right now, and young depth like Proctor is also missing, which trims some of the easy spacing and rhythm that makes a great offense look unstoppable. So yes, the hosts can still put up points, but they have fewer ways to bend the defense on every possession, and that tends to show up over 4 quarters more than it does in any single highlight or stretch. Here is the thing that really pulls the picture together. If the stronger offense does manage to grab control early, coaching logic on a back-to-back night often shifts into manage the game mode, with longer bench stretches, fewer early clock threes, and more possessions that start with a slow walk up the floor rather than a quick push. If instead the 76ers succeed in dragging this into their comfort zone, the game turns into a string of half-court possessions, with Drummond cleaning the glass, wings driving into the paint and kicking out, and each trip down the floor eating more time off the shot clock. In both cases, the common thread is fewer possessions and more grind, not a constant race up and down. Both teams sit roughly in that middle lane for pace, with neither side playing like a track meet by default, which means you need either elite shooting across the board or a steady parade to the free throw line to push this into true shootout territory. That can happen on a weird night, sure, but the more likely picture is a game that has scoring runs here and there, then stretches where both teams trade empty trips and the scoreboard crawls for a while. With lineups that are thinned out on both sides and styles that naturally pull things toward the half-court, the most reasonable expectation is that this contest finishes under the kind of explosive total that the market is hinting at. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Denver Nuggets versus Oklahoma City Thunder. This matchup feels like a personality test between two very different versions of confidence. On one side, you have Oklahoma City, the polished defending champion, rolling through the season with a record around 50-15 and a double-digit scoring margin that makes them look almost unfair on paper. On the other, you have Denver, fresh off a brutal 142-103 home loss that was so bad people were calling it a complete demolition, which is the sort of game that bruises pride and sharpens focus at the same time. Odds makers have treated this like a coronation for the champs, handing Oklahoma City the role of clear favorite in their own building while Denver wears the underdog label that usually belongs to rebuilding teams, not true contenders. That is what makes this so interesting. You get a Nuggets group that still owns the league's most efficient offense, putting up well over 120 points a night with elite shooting and a scheme that rarely wastes a possession. But that same group has a defense living in the bottom third of the league, which means most nights turn into track meet style shootouts rather than slow, careful chess matches. When a team like that is catching a healthy number of points, the question is not whether they can score, it is whether they can stay organized long enough on defense to keep things close instead of letting the game slide into one of those runaway Thunder runs that blow up spreads by the third quarter. Injuries add another twist that the raw numbers do not show at first glance. Denver has been juggling health, with Peyton Watson dealing with a hamstring issue and Jamal Murray nursing that ankle sprain he picked up in the loss to New York, so there is at least some risk that their preferred guard rotation is not perfectly clean. On the flip side, Oklahoma City is carrying its own laundry list. Brandon Carlson has been banged up with a back problem. Isaiah Hartenstein has been out with a calf issue. Thomas Sorber has already been ruled out for the season with the knee injury. And wings and guards like Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, Alex Caruso, and Ajay Mitchell have all had their own day-to-day tags around hamstring, illness, hip, and abdomen concerns. That is a lot of rim protection, size, and defensive versatility either missing or operating below full strength around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Honestly, that matters even more against a team that can punish every little rotation mistake. Denver's identity still flows through Nikola Jokic, who runs that offense like a point guard trapped in a center's body. He is surrounded by floor-spacing bigs like Jonas Valanciunas and shooters like Cameron Johnson, and now there is a steady hand in Tyus Jones to calm late-game possessions and keep the offense on script. The whole system is built on reads, cuts, and quick decisions rather than one fragile scoring option that can be game-planned away. Even if Murray is limited, the structure does not fall apart. It just shifts responsibilities, which keeps Denver dangerous in almost any environment. Oklahoma City at full strength is a nightmare to score on, with length everywhere and schemes that squeeze the life out of careless offenses. Yet this version is not quite that. Without a fully stocked front court and with several of those defensive specialists either out or recently sidelined, they lean even more on Shea's brilliance and the swarm of athletes around him. The defense can still be excellent in stretches, but expecting the same locked-in group that steamrolled the league on the way to that big net rating is a little optimistic when the rotation is this patched together. That is where a hungry, wounded Nuggets team starts to feel live. You get the emotional bounce-back angle after being embarrassed at home, the underdog chip on the shoulder, and an offense that has already proven it can score on everybody, including Oklahoma City. So when the market stacks that many points against them, those underdog numbers start to look more like a cushion than a warning sign. As our first pick for this matchup, the Denver Nuggets to cover the spread as underdogs is our full-game side pick. Both teams come in with top-tier offensive ratings, and neither one has spent much time pretending to be a grinded-out defensive outfit this season. Denver sits at the top of the league in offensive efficiency, bombing in threes, slicing teams up with Jokic's playmaking, and generally turning games into track meets where their defense is asked to do just enough, not everything. They score a ton and give up plenty, which is a fun combination if you like high totals and a scary one if you are holding an under ticket. Oklahoma City is not far behind offensively. Their attack is built on Shea living in the lane, getting to his spots, and forcing defenses to send extra help. Once that happens, shooters like Isaiah Joe stretch things all the way out to deep range, and when Chet Holmgren is available, he drags bigs into uncomfortable spaces as a pick-and-pop threat or as a long finisher. Even when some of those front court and wing pieces are missing or limited, the Thunder do not suddenly become a low-scoring team. They simply lean deeper into their guard and wing scoring, which can actually speed the game up. The recent form hints at the same story. Denver's profile has been that of a team that keeps hitting overs because their offense is so clean and their defense so leaky that both sides find a rhythm. They are perfectly happy turning games into first 1-120 win situations, and the way they move the ball creates open looks almost by habit. Oklahoma City, for their part, just came off that tight win against a short-handed Warriors squad where they lived at the free throw line and turned a steady parade of drives into easy points. When a team gets to the stripe like that, it keeps the scoreboard ticking even when jumpers cool off a bit. The injury picture actually nudges this game toward more points rather than fewer. For Oklahoma City, questions around big bodies like Hartenstein and Thomas Sorber plus the day-to-day tags on Holmgren and Caruso mean they may need to use more small or hybrid lineups. Those lineups usually move faster, shoot more threes, and do not always hold up perfectly on the defensive glass or at the rim. For Denver, the defensive issues were already there, and any lingering effects from Murray's ankle or other bumps in the rotation are more likely to show up on that end than in their ability to run Jokic-centric offense. You get lineups that can really score and that might struggle to finish possessions cleanly on defense. Game flow sets up nicely for a total that climbs. If the score stays tight, you get both teams pushing their main guys for big minutes, which means more offensive talent on the court and fewer deep bench defenders. If one side builds a lead, the other has enough firepower to chase from behind with quick threes and aggressive drives, which usually leads to more fouls and more free throws as the trailing team tries to extend the game. Either way, the combination of elite offensive efficiency, shaky defensive moments, and banged-up front courts points away from a slow, methodical contest and towards something far more open, where you look up in the fourth quarter and realize both teams are already deep into triple digits. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Memphis Grizzlies versus Brooklyn Nets. The Memphis Grizzlies head to the Barclays Center to face the Brooklyn Nets on Monday in NBA action. Memphis is coming off losses to the Clippers and the Trail Blazers and has the 76ers waiting next, and that stretch lines up with a bigger slump where the Grizzlies have dropped 10 of their last 13 games. Brooklyn has had an even rougher run, with a loss to the Heat, a win over the Pistons, and another date with Detroit on the schedule, and the Nets have fallen in 25 of their last 30 games. For fans of either side, that kind of record feels like a long, slow walk through a rainstorm with no umbrella. On the injury front, the Grizzlies are still missing Zach Edey, Ja Morant, Brandon Clark, Taj Gibson, and Santi Aldama, and Scottie Pippen Jr. is listed as doubtful. The Nets have ruled out Igor Demon, and they have chosen to rest Michael Porter Jr. for this matchup. So you are looking at two short-handed groups that already have trouble stacking wins, which does not exactly calm the nerves. You really cannot say either side inspires much confidence because both teams have been piling up losses and giving off that tank mode vibe. Honestly, it feels like both organizations are more focused on the long game than squeezing out every possible regular season win right now. The one thing you can lean on a little is that massive comeback the Nets just pulled off against the Pistons, which can act like a shot in the arm for a locker room that has been dragged down by losses. Momentum is fickle, but a comeback like that can give players a small spark, even if nothing else in the season feels great. Memphis, on the other hand, is carrying a long injury list and does not really look like a group that is pushing hard to rack up victories. It is tough to believe that every single name on that report is dealing with something that would normally keep them out, so it sure looks like the Grizzlies are sitting players and easing their way through. With all of that, backing the Nets at home ends up feeling like the lesser of two bad choices rather than anything exciting, and the whole matchup still comes across as a giant bowl of yuck for anyone placing a ticket. As our first pick for this matchup, the Brooklyn Nets to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The scoring profile paints a clearer picture of how this matchup might play out on the scoreboard. The Memphis Grizzlies are putting up 115.7 points per game while hitting 46.2% of their shots from the field, and they are giving up 117.8 points on 47.2% shooting on the other end. From deep, the Grizzlies are knocking down 35.8% of their three-point attempts and 79.3% at the free throw line, while allowing opponents to shoot 36% from beyond the arc, and they are grabbing 43.9 rebounds per game. The Brooklyn Nets sit at 106.9 points per game on 44.4% shooting, and they are surrendering 115.6 points while opponents connect on 49.5% of their looks. Brooklyn is hitting 34.1% from 3 and 77.6% at the stripe, and the Nets are giving up 38% shooting from long range while collecting 40.2 rebounds per game. Put side by side, those numbers show two defenses that allow efficient shooting and one offense that scores at a healthy clip, which sets the stage for more points than you might expect from teams that are struggling in the standings. Even with all the losing and the talk of tanking, the combination of Memphis' scoring power, Brooklyn's defensive issues, and the soft perimeter resistance on both sides points toward a matchup where the scoreboard has plenty of work to do. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Golden State Warriors versus Utah Jazz. The Golden State Warriors head into the Delta Center on Monday night to take on the Utah Jazz. Golden State is coming off a loss to the Thunder, a win over the Rockets, and they have the Bulls on deck, and that stretch fits into a bigger pattern where they have dropped 10 of their last 16 games. Utah just fell to the Bucks, bounced back with a win over the Wizards, and has the Knicks waiting next. And the Jazz have lost 25 of their last 32, which tells you how rough this season has felt for them. The Warriors are still without Stephen Curry, Seth Curry, Jimmy Butler III, Al Horford, and Kristaps Porzingis, so they are leaning heavily on their remaining pieces to carry the load night after night. The Jazz have ruled out Lauri Markkanen, Vince Williams Jr., Jusuf Nurkic, and Jaren Jackson Jr., which leaves them without several key names that usually help stabilize things on both ends of the floor. These teams have already faced each other 3 times this season, and Golden State has handled business comfortably in every one of those meetings. When you mix that with the recent slump from Utah, it gets hard to imagine a scenario where the Jazz suddenly flip the script without so many of their main contributors. The Jazz can still surprise at home from time to time, especially when the crowd gets loud and they catch an opponent napping, and that building has seen its fair share of random hot shooting nights. But the Warriors were right there in a narrow loss to the Thunder in their last outing, and that kind of competitive effort, even in defeat, usually tells you something about their mindset. If they bring that same attitude into this one, with focus and a bit of pride after some tough results, they are more than capable of taking control again against a team they have already solved several times this year. The injuries on both sides look scary on paper, but the recent head-to-head results and the overall form of Utah make the path clearer. Golden State does not need to be perfect here, just organized and locked in for 4 quarters, and if that happens, the matchup leans their way both on the floor and against the number. As our first pick for this matchup, the Golden State Warriors to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Golden State Warriors are averaging 115.1 points per game on 46% shooting from the field, while allowing 113.9 points on 47.2% shooting, which points to plenty of possessions and some leaky moments on defense. From deep, Golden State is hitting 35.9% of its three-point attempts and 80.3% at the free throw line, and they are giving up 35.4% shooting from beyond the arc while pulling down 42.9 rebounds per game. That mix usually leads to games where both teams get chances to score, especially when the outside shots are falling even at an average clip. The Utah Jazz are averaging 117.4 points on 46.4% shooting and giving up 125.1 points on 48.9% shooting, which is a huge hint that their games often turn into track meets rather than grind fest battles. They are shooting 34.5% from 3 and 79.8% at the stripe, and they are allowing opponents to hit 37.2% from long range while grabbing 44 rebounds per contest. Put side by side, that is one team with a strong offensive ceiling and another with very shaky defense, matched with an opponent that scores efficiently and does not exactly shut the door on the other end either. Utah's tendency to give up clean looks, especially from outside, and Golden State's comfort in playing at a steady, flowing tempo sets the stage for long stretches where the scoreboard keeps moving. Even with the injuries, the playing styles here lean more toward trading buckets than locking in for a slow, half-court slugfest, and that kind of rhythm usually nudges totals higher than people expect. With both teams capable of putting up points and both defenses allowing high percentages from the field, the overall picture points toward a contest where offense wins the night and the final number climbs. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. New York Knicks versus Los Angeles Clippers. The New York Knicks and Los Angeles Clippers meet Monday in NBA action at the Intuit Dome. New York rolls in after beating the Nuggets, falling to the Lakers, and with the Jazz up next, and they have still managed to win 16 of their last 22 games, which says a lot about their overall groove lately. The Clippers just beat the Grizzlies, lost to the Spurs, and have the Timberwolves on deck, and they have taken 4 of their last 5, so they come in feeling pretty good about themselves too. The Knicks are still without Miles McBride, which trims their guard depth a bit. The Clippers have once again ruled out Bradley Beal and John Collins, so their rotation is familiar by now, and that makes the recent addition of Darius Garland feel even more important as another go-to option with the ball in his hands. New York's loss to the Lakers was frustrating, and not just because it went in the wrong column. They coughed the ball up 18 times and shot just 24% from 3 against a defense that is, at best, middle of the pack, which is the kind of combination that makes coaches stare at the box score a little too long. Mikal Bridges had a scoreless night in 27 minutes, and while you cannot pin everything on him, seeing a key scorer blanked like that sticks in people's minds. Here is the thing, the quick turnaround might actually help the Knicks mentally, since they get to jump right into another challenge instead of dwelling on that mess. The problem is, the challenge is not a soft one. They have beaten the Clippers only 2 times in the last 7 meetings, and they have covered the number just twice in those same games, which hints at a matchup that has not treated them kindly. At this building in particular, they are only 2-11 straight up in 13 visits, so the Intuit Dome has felt more like a bad memory than a friendly stop. On the other side, Kawhi Leonard and his teammates had an extra day of rest compared to New York, and that extra recovery should let them control the tempo more often than not. A narrow win over the Grizzlies helped wash away the taste of that brutal collapse against San Antonio when they let a 25-point cushion disappear, and that kind of emotional reset matters over a long season. Sitting at 31-32 straight up is pretty remarkable after such a bumpy start to the year, and now they have a clean shot to get back to the even mark for the first time since early November, which adds a little extra juice to this one. Garland finally looks free of the toe issue, and his 20 points and 6 assists on Saturday against Memphis were his best showing as a Clipper so far, a real sign that he is settling in. New York has been excellent at cooling off opponents from behind the arc lately, but against this opponent that strength is a bit less valuable. Los Angeles just showed it knows how to grind out wins even when the threes are not falling, beating the Grizzlies while hitting only 4 shots from deep, which is a pretty wild box score in the modern game. They carry the better recent head-to-head track record, and they are in a slightly cleaner mental space after that Knicks loss to the Lakers, which opened up those familiar questions about road form. This number on the board feels off, especially with New York on the second night of a back-to-back and already sitting on 15 road defeats. The Clippers keep figuring out ways to come out on top, and they have covered in 8 of their last 10 games against the spread, so their recent performance has backed up the eye test. They keep getting shrugged off by the market, and they keep answering with results that do not match that skepticism. With rest in their favor and home court behind them, it is tough to see how they end up in the underdog role here, and that disconnect is pretty wild. I am not buying that storyline, not one bit. As our first pick for this matchup, the Los Angeles Clippers to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The New York Knicks are averaging 116.9 points on 47.3% shooting while giving up only 110.6 points on 45.7% to opponents, which shows a team that scores well but also tightens the screws on defense. From long range, New York is hitting 37.3% of its threes and 78.4% at the free throw line, and they are holding opponents to 35.4% shooting from deep while pulling down 46.1 rebounds per game, which helps limit second chances and keeps totals from ballooning. The Los Angeles Clippers are averaging 112.6 points on an efficient 48.1% from the field, and they are allowing 112.3 points on 46.4% shooting, so their games sit in that zone where things are competitive but not always wild in terms of scoring explosions. They are shooting 36% from beyond the arc and 83.2% at the line, while giving up 36.7% from three and grabbing 41.1 rebounds per game, numbers that point to steady efficiency but not an out-of-control pace. Put together, you have one team that rebounds at a high level and defends well enough to drag opponents into longer possessions, and another that is comfortable winning without relying on a barrage of threes, which naturally leans toward a more controlled scoreboard. Back-to-back fatigue for New York can also show up more on jump shots and late-game execution than on raw pace, which often trims a few extra points off what might look like a high-scoring setup on paper. With both offenses capable but not frantic, and with defensive effort and rebounding likely front and center, the overall rhythm points more toward a contest where the final tally stays on the quieter side compared to what some might initially expect. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.